A very warm welcome to all. I've been training on CISSP for almost 4 years now. I've trained close to 400 students, and on simultaneously I've also worked in many MNCs as well. I have over close to now 12 years of experience in full-time experience as well, along with the training experience. So moving on, let me, as all of you must be knowing about InfoSec Train, it's one of the finest security training institutes across the globe. There are a lot of tons of programs which you can attend. There are a lot of trainers across as well from different backgrounds, from different kinds of training, customized trainings as well, industry standards trainings are there. Few of the endorsements, it has been around for some time now. It's the fifth year running now. You can see the endorsements. It is pretty impressive. Some of the trusted clients, just want to add that before we move forward. And also why InfoSec Train is very, you can see we have the InfoSec Train has global partnership with Microsoft, ISACA, EC Council. So, and also post that you get 24/7 support post training completion. So it's not that once you complete the training, it's done. So you get that support. You have, and there is flexible modes of training, flexibility in timing. You get recorded sessions as well. And the training can be tailor made as per your requirement as well. So moving on, even before we start, I want to talk about a case study. And why am I doing this? You'll understand once we discuss this. I'll come back to that. Please be patient. So here is a case study. The case study, I have two case studies for you. The first one is you have read in the security news that a new vulnerability is found for a common OS, which is wreaking havoc across the globe. One of your job responsibility as a security administrator for your organization is to verify and patch vulnerabilities. So what will be your action plan? Most important thing is that you check for vulnerable assets first, right? I mean, there's no point of running here there and doing that firefighting if you don't have the vulnerable assets, right? For example, there is a vulnerability which is actually exposing a Windows 10 machine of a particular server of a particular patch. It is not affecting all Windows 10. So you need to check if that patch is applicable to you to your organization or not. So you have to check the OS first, the whether the server with those OS you're using or any machines with those OS you're using or not. Second thing, whether that version number is applicable to you or not. So that is first what you'll check, and then second important piece is as pointed out, you need to verify first I found out if any vulnerability is there or not. If it is there, then I need to prioritize. I need to make sure that maybe first I'll prioritize. I'll patch my critical servers. Then I'll come to desktop. Then I'll come to some DMZ servers are there. Then I'll come to my desktop. So I'll prioritize. Then I need to test the patch as well. I just cannot go ahead just because there is a process in place. And again, these are all part of change management. Whether you're testing the patching, you are taking the required approval, all these is a part of a change management process. So you need to have that in place. Any good organization has that. And also one more thing which I would like to add here is any good organization would also have two kind of change management process. One is a normal one. One is when these kind of critical things happen, and in those cases there would be an urgent change management process in place as well. So that is again very important. So first is to understand the patch, whether it is applicable to you or not, and then follow the change management process in your organization. So you test it. Yeah. So if you see that post testing you find testing you find there are some patches which are applicable to you, follow your change management process of applying the patches. You need to schedule the change and apply the patches, and obviously when you're scheduling the change, all those approvals needs to be taken as well. And also very important thing, if it is not applicable to you, then you need to document it and report it as well. Whether it is applicable or not, it is very important that you keep your senior management posted, because it is very important they understand the risk associated with it. I hope it is clear. If so, I have one more case study. This is a second case study. This follows the first one. So it's not only that we have common, the scenario is same, But now what happened is post verification, you found that there are no assets which are vulnerable. So what will be your next step? Now you found there are no assets at all which this particular vulnerability is affecting. So you don't have any assets. So what will you do? Suppose maybe you're not using that OS at all, right? Maybe Ubuntu OS is vulnerable and you're not using that in your organization. Or maybe you're using Ubuntu, but that specific version is not vulnerable. Then what do you do in that case? What will be your next steps? Yeah, so is it not important that you verify because nowadays any organization, even if you are a small or a medium-sized organization, you will have suppliers, you will have vendors. There would be some people who would be doing IT management for you. And if any of these are also vulnerable or they are exposed, there is every chance that your organization may get exposed as well, right? Here is what I would do. Few of the probable action plans. Again, as I have mentioned in the previous case study as well, these are by no way exhaustive. Every organization has their own way of dealing with things, but these are some general points which will be applicable anywhere. Check if any of your third party suppliers, vendors, etc. have got compromised. If no compromises, at least if they have any vulnerable machines, right? Because that can have an impact on your organization in future, or they may get impacted in future. For example, the vulnerability, the remote code execution, and their machines get exploited. There are chances that the hackers may exploit your machine as well. So it depends again what kind of relation you are in with the supplier vendor, what kind of access they have. So all these things are important. If they don't have any vulnerable machine, that's fine. You document it and update your management. If they have it, then ask them what kind of due diligence they have performed. Right? There has to be some standard response to it, right? And we have seen those responses in the previous year case study as well. So my next question is, uh, not a question, but just for discussion sake, why are we even talking about case study? I have called you for a CISSP webinar talking about overview about CISSP and giving you a glimpse and maybe answer a few questions you have and also walk you through how to prepare, maybe provide your preparation strategy for the exam. But why are we even talking about case studies? The reason behind it is a lot of us, and I've seen this. As I said, I have full time, almost close to 12 years of experience across the board in different verticals. I've been part of cyber defense. I've been part of risk governance and risk management. I've been part of business continuity planning teams. So I've played different hats. So what I've seen is people get certified, but they don't know how to apply those concepts. And I feel which is a very important key aspect that you should know how to apply the concepts you have learned. You may not even go for a certification. You probably read or you may undergo a training. But by reading, you have spent time. By training, also you have spent time and money. But what is the output of it? What is the return of investment you have done? Whether you have invested time, you have invested money, or you have invested both. There has to be some return of investment. So I think that is where we need to be smart and we need to understand how to apply those concepts. And one more reason it is very important, I'm pretty confident most of you here are has joined this webinar, 8 to 10, many would have completed their office and still joining the CISSP webinar because the reason behind it is the CISSP has a lot of value. It adds a lot of value to your CV. But why are you here? It's important. And while even preparation mode, when you're in the preparation mode, if you whatever you learn, if you try to connect it to the real world, what's happening in the real world and how these things are applied, right? I just give you an example of two case studies, right? It's important that you follow the change management process in the first case we talked about. You cannot directly go and apply patches. That will not work. You need to take approval, you need to test it, you need to plan for it, and then do something. Obviously, as I said, there may be some urgent change management planning where a normal change takes maybe a month to complete. But because of the urgency in this case, the entire change management process may be completed within a week, right? So, but it's important that you should be able to apply what you're reading. And if you do that while reading itself, it becomes easy. But post completing everything, it's very difficult. So while reading, if you apply, and I've done that when I was preparing for CISSP, it really helped me. I read about point-to-point protocol in the domain 4. I don't know where it is applied. So one fine day, I went to a restaurant and I was swiping my card. I saw that a triple P link is being established, right? So that is how you should look at. Like, think when you read about something, especially there are so many things to do, so many things to learn, and chances of forgetting things is very high because the courseware is so vast, 8 domains. Within 8 domains, there are so many things to learn, and most of us may have exposure to maybe one, two, or maximum 3 domains. Nobody would have worked in all the 8 domains. Maybe you may have some high level overview, but you may not have that detailed understanding. So in those cases, what do you do? So when you try to connect whatever you learn to the real world, it becomes extremely easy, and I've done that. That's why with that, I'm providing you that suggestion. So please remember, when you're reading, when you're preparing for CISSP, try to connect whatever you read. Where if you're reading about a protocol, where is it applicable? When you're reading about maybe policies, how is policies helpful? Try to think on those lines. Go and check if you're working for an organization. Check what your organization policies are. That will give you a lot of insight. So I'm moving out onto agenda. I'll talk about the benefits first. A lot of these you would already know, but just to reiterate, and maybe maybe some points which you're not aware of as well. So if you have done your research, you will find out that it has been consistently ranked as a top 5 IT security certification in the last 10 years, and maybe even before that as well. But just wanted to give you a view about last 10 years. And when you talk about top paying IT security certification, it will be in top 3. So whether you look at it as a value add to your resume, or whether you look at from a pay perspective, CISSP stands out. Now, UK NARIC declares that CISSP is comparable to master's degree standard in UK and Europe. So what is UK NARIC? UK NARIC is a body which does studies of different courses. It may be a college courseware, it may be a certification-based courseware. It is based in UK, and you can just search for UK NARIC on, or maybe just search for NARIC on Google. You'll find it out what NARIC is all about. So they give ranking to each courseware based on their evaluation. So there are different criteria on which they evaluate. It may be difficulty level, it may be what value it adds to the profile. So on all those different factors, they evaluate a course. I'm not saying, please don't get me wrong, I'm not stating here that if you complete CISSP, it's like equivalent to a master's degree. I'm not saying that. What I'm trying to convey is the level of value which it will add is almost equal to a master's degree. But I'm not saying don't, if you're going for a master's degree, I'm not stopping you. I'm not saying don't do that. But I'm just saying, I'm trying to convey here that UK NARIC, when they have done that study, they find it, and UK NARIC has done a lot of studies on different courses. It's not that they are, and they do it for courseware across the globe. But their rating is highly accepted across UK and Europe. Vendor neutral, internationally recognized certification. It's not that it is bounded to a location. It is not that it is only for certain set of people, or it is for certain set of people located at certain location. It's not that. You get internationally recognized across the board. It adds a lot of value to your CV. So I just cannot stress enough on this point. And most important thing, it is vendor neutral, because I'm not, when I do maybe a vendor-based certification, I'm I'm isolated to that vendor. But when I do a vendor neutral certification, it's a, I can say, overall cyber security governance kind of certification, which gives you a overall view on what's happening in the across the 8 domains. So it adds not only, if I talk about your CV or your salary, it also adds value. It also adds a lot of knowledge to you as well. So if you are right post clearing CISSP, I am able to handle anything, almost anything thrown at me. I'm not saying anything under the roof. Cybersecurity has become so broad. Yeah, nobody can claim they are an expert in cybersecurity. You can be expert in one particular domain, but you cannot be an expert across the board, right? And you may be an expert pen tester. You may be an expert in web application security, or you may be an expert in governance and risk management. You may be an expert in blue teaming activities, in maybe in SOC or incident response. But you cannot be an expert in all these different areas. But with CISSP, I would highly recommend anyone who wants to make a career in cybersecurity or information security domain to go through the material. Even there is a common belief in the market that you should only do it when you have 5 years, 10 years of experience. Guys, believe me, I've seen people who have done it with the experience of 2 years, 3 years. It does add a lot of value. And I personally know few of the guys as well. And also, even if you don't want to spend money on certification, you think at this point of time you'll not be able to do it, at least go through the courseware, because it, as I said, it does give you a lot of knowledge across the different 8 domains, and it helps you to then evaluate which way you want to go. Maybe after reading cryptography you liked it a lot, maybe you want to make a career within cryptography, so it at least sets that base. That base is very important. I've in with my practical experience being a hiring manager at different organizations as well, I've seen people say I have 15 years of experience, I have 10 years of experience, but the basics are not very strong, right? The basics will, and CISSP will definitely do that. It will set that base strong. From on that base, you can build whatever you want to, right? You can, now you have done a general governance, you have got that general governance idea. Now you can build your career in a specific domain. So I'll highly recommend, even if you don't want to go for the certification, at least go through the courseware, do a self study or undergo a training, whatever you prefer, and gain that knowledge. It's a benchmark certification. Why do I say that? I say that because if you go to LinkedIn, just search for even a job requiring maybe a 2 years, 3 years experience, people are still asking for CISSP these days. That's why I have, because it has, and as I said, it gives you knowledge across that 8 domains. It sets that bench. So it has become a benchmark certification. You can gain knowledge on those 8 domains, as well as whether you want to get shortlisted when you're applying for job these days. For any cybersecurity job, even at an entry level, you find hundreds of applications. How do you stand out from the crowd? You show that you're CISSP certified. And I don't 100% believe on this, but I've seen even at entry level jobs, people are asking for CISSP. Even if they're not saying it's mandatory, they're at least mentioning CISSP certified candidates would be preferred. And I'm pretty confident that if you are doing some job search, you would have seen that in the job description. If you're not, you can still go ahead on the LinkedIn, check, do some search, just go for the jobs and see. Even just set the baseline maybe for 2 to 5 years, you'll still find people asking for CISSP. I've already talked about this point. Demand and supply gap. Yeah, there are a lot of demand for CISSP certified candidates, and in some job roles, they are clearly stating in the job description that CISSP certification is mandatory. And I've seen that as well when I've got a call from a talent acquisition team from a company or HR. In some cases, I'm not in each and every case. They say they clearly ask you're CISSP certified and you're currently holding the certification. When I say yes, then they take my profile forward. So that is something again. There is a gap as well. So and also a study was done by ISC Square in 2020, and they found out that the skill gap is very high. So across the globe, there is a skill gap of 3.08 million candidates. By skill gap, they're not stating that when the job role is opening, people are unable to fill it. It's not the case. They're saying that the cyber security teams are stating we want this skills, we want maybe someone who is an expert pen tester, maybe we want 5 candidates like that, but we don't have it. So it is, they're talking about skill gap, they're not talking about gap in the jobs. So when they've done that study, they have found across the globe there is a skill gap of 3.08 million, and the gap is extremely high. The gap is around 2.1 million in APAC region, and we, most of us in this conference, and including me, we are in India, and we are under that APAC region. So when you do the certification, you stand out, you get highly valued. I cannot stress on that enough. I've seen lot of cases where people career zooming post completing the certification. They just moved up the ladder. See, I'm not here again. I want to add, I'm not undermining the experience factor. I'm not stating that experience is not important. It is a very important factor. It helps you take right decisions because if you have already been in the scenarios, you know what to do. But when you gain that knowledge, CISSP helps you to think like manager. So in these cases, you really, or maybe a risk advisor, it really helps you to take those decisions in the tough time. So let's talk about curriculum a bit. So if I do a weightage comparison across the board, so the number of domains, the domain names are same. There is not a huge difference in the number of domains and the domain names. But the weightage, if you see here, I've already highlighted the domain 4 weightage has gone down by 1%. So this blue line which you see or the bar which you see is showing you weightage of that domain in 2018. So this the CISSP exam, the coursework changes every 3 years. So change happened in 2015, change happened in 2018, and now in the May 2021, and this weightage is applicable from the 1st May 2021. So since we are already past that date, so these weightage will be applicable if you're taking the exam in future. So the only minor difference which I see in the weightage comparison is 14% for domain 4, which is communication and network security in 2018, and 13% in 2021. So only 1% difference, and that 1% reduction has been added to the domain 8, which is software development security domain. So from 10%, the weightage has changed to 11%. This is important because from 1st May 2021, as I've stated, the course has changed a bit. Again, if you have been preparing, don't get disheartened. It's not that the change is very big. There are minute changes here and there. Some pieces are removed, some new additions are there. But overall, it is good. I'll say, I mean, it was the changes are on the expected line. It's not that some unexpected or unbelievable changes have happened. So I'll just share the exam outline as well, just for a discussion sake, so that it is easy for you to understand what I was trying to convey. I'll not go in detail of each one. But what I'm just trying to convey here is what changes have happened. Just a walkthrough of that. Right. So you can download this as well. This is the CISSP exam outline. Just go to www.isc2.org. You can download the latest exam outline right from the domains overview, the exam format, uh, and domain weightage. Everything is mentioned in this PDF file, which you can download for free. So I would highly recommend if you're preparing for CISSP, one common complaint I hear is, guys, I went for the exam, but I saw completely new things there. So people are really surprised. What is this? I prepared hard for so many months, and I saw new things. So it's very important that you understand the exam outline and what is covered. Just have it downloaded and refer it whenever you feel like referring something. It's and even after your preparation, just refer it once if something is missed out. Just go through that, do a Google search, or maybe go through the book on that particular topic, because you'll definitely find few things which are unexpected. Why you will find that, we'll discuss that. But one thing which I would like to you to really do is immediately download it and keep it handy if you're preparing for the exam. So if I look at it right from the start, see few changes here and there are like, you see authenticity and non-repudiation added along with the CIA trade. And this CIA trade was their part of CISP from ages. And now it is not that authenticity and non-repudiation was not part of the domain, was not part of CISP earlier. It was already a part, but it was not added along with the CIA trade. So we see some changes there. And if I just look at what other changes have happened, so we see changes in 1.6 as well. This investigation types, again, this is you. If you are already preparing for the exam, you would know this was part of domain 7 earlier. It was part of security operations domain, but now it is part of the domain 1. So that is one change. But if you so far all these pieces 1.3, 1.4, all these were part of CISP in 2018 as well. So there is nothing new here, nothing new which you need to look at. right? And I think one more thing which I just remember at the back of my head is this one, and we discussed that in the use case as well. The supply chain risk management is, as I was expecting it to get added under risk management, and that has happened because this has been in prominence for some time now. Especially in the last 2 years, there has been a lot of focus on supply chain risk management, and with the SolarWinds hack, this has come under radar for everyone. It was definite. I was definitely expecting it to come to be a part of CISP, and rightly they have put it under risk management. And one more thing which you can see here is this security champions and gamification was not part of the security awareness and education. Again, nothing new. If you are you have been in part of security industry, you would know what those terms are. Or maybe even if you don't know, you would have been part of some of these, or maybe heard about it, but maybe you don't know the term. Just by simple Google searches, you'll understand what it is. So as I said, there is no major changes. A few topics here and there have been added, but overall things remain almost the same. In domain two, if I have to just go through, I would say this end of life, end of support is something new, especially end of life, because asset retention was already a part, but we didn't have like the specific examples are mentioned now on end of life and end of support, and you feel it is important because they specifically mentioned it, right? And data life cycle as well. We already had that data remnants, data destruction, but this data life cycle specifically is mentioned, and these subdomains are mentioned under it. It was not part of the only managed data life cycle was there in 2018, but if you just do a comparison, these subdomains, which was already a part of 2018, were not just mentioned under that. Yeah. So if DLP was part of domain 7, security operations, and CASB was part of domain 3, under part of the cloud domain basically. So, but it is added now under domain 2. So we have few changes like that, right? And even if we look at domain 3, if I look at these things, 3.1 is the threat modeling, least privilege. These were already a part, but these things, keep it simple, zero trust, privacy by design, trust by verify, shared responsibilities, all these things are new. And in fact, what if you compare it with domain 3 2018, only implement and manage engineering process was mentioned, but research have been added now. Research was not there earlier as a part of just this one word research, and they've added these many subdomains. I was expecting zero trust. It is again in under everyone's radar currently, zero trust. I'm definitely expecting questions in exam on zero trust, and it is not some rocket science. It is not something which you cannot understand. But zero trust is a very important part that you need to understand. So the zero trust, and I was also expecting zero trust to be the part of the domains. You see microservices, you see containerization. Again, it was expected. Again, a lot of focus on containers in the current world. It's under everyone's radar, so it was expected that these things will come in. And uh, again, the serverless embedded system was already there. HPC system, virtualized system. I can go on and go for. So just wanted to give you a glimpse of few changes which has occurred. Right. And if I talk about, I think in 3.9 only this thing I see additionally. All these were the other remaining parts were part of the 2018 courseware as well. And cryptanalytic attacks, we didn't have subdomains, but new subdomains have added. And if as expected, ransomware is added as well. It was not there as a part of. It was a very small portion, but there was not specific focus on ransomware attack in 2018. But now we see it is specifically mentioned as a subdomain. So you may expect a question or two on that, and specifically focus on ransomware as well. And again, fault injection, timing, pass the hash, man in the middle attack. Man in the middle was there already, but pass the hash, timing, fault injection, all these, and Kerberos exploitation as well, I would say, is again something new. So if you see, there are not major changes so far as whatever we have looked at. Just wanted to give you a glimpse at what has changed. If you have any questions, I'm ready to answer that. But the goal is not to go through them one by one. That's not part of the agenda. The goal was just to give you a glimpse. Some things have changed, but the whole goal was to give you a glimpse. If you have done some preparation, you are already maybe halfway there. Don't get disheartened. There are no major changes, and there is nothing something which you cannot apply, right? Even I was reading a IC Square post from on the IC Square website itself. They mentioned that you should know how to apply the concept. You should be good for the exam even without covering every new aspect. If you cover, it's good. Obviously, there is nothing like that very essential that you cover as much as you can. But if you have already prepared halfway there, don't get disheartened. Continue to preparation. Then you can come back and look at what changes have occurred, and then go ahead and see what extra things are there which you need to learn. So yeah, one thing which I would like to point out is here again, this is with experience. Nobody is not written anywhere. IC Square doesn't claim that. One thing that you need to understand is if the domain weight, for example, the domain weightage for security and risk management is 15%. So if I am getting 100 questions in exam, our thought process as an individual would be will get 15 questions out of 100 from domain one. But that may not be an exact correct calculation, because I may give you 20, not me, IC Square may give you 20 questions on the exam from security and risk management out of 100, but the difficulty level of the question may be lesser. And they may give you, domain 2 is only 10%, but they may give you 15 questions out of 100 from that. And sorry, domain 2 has weightage of 10%, so the expectation is that you'll get 10 questions out of 100 from that. You may get 8 questions out of 100 from that, but the difficulty level of those questions would be much higher compared to what the questions you got for the domain 1. So they balance out weightage in that way. Again, not written anywhere. IC Square doesn't claim that, but this is what I feel with my experience, that they balance it out like that, because I've heard people stating that they got questions from a certain domain, a lot of questions from a certain domain. So why is that happening? That's happening because the weightage would change. If you get a lot of questions from a particular domain, the weightage of that question would be lesser compared to a domain from you have got few questions, but those questions may be very difficult to answer. That's very important point to remember. Again, with experience, not written, don't search for it anywhere, will not find it. So let's talk about exam format. So the current format for English exam takers, and I'm pretty confident everyone here will take exam if they're planning for it in English language. So I'm not talking about other languages, because the format is a little different. But for English language takers, the current format which is followed is computerized adaptive testing, called as CAT in short. So the CAT format, what it does is it starts at a lower level than CISP level. For example, maybe the first 10 questions you will get, the difficulty level of those questions would be much lower than the or the benchmark of the CISP level, right? So first initial 10-15 questions, there are high chances that you will get it at those may be very easy questions, those may be direct questions. So, and then as you gradually answer them correctly, the difficulty level of the questions would increase, right? Earlier, in the earlier version, before this changes occurred, this changes occurred in 2017 December. So before that, the format was a linear based exam where we used to get flat 250 questions, and it was 6 hours of exam. Now the format has changed. The number of questions which you get are variable. You don't get fixed set of questions, but you will get at least minimum number of questions you will get is 100. Maximum number of questions you will get is 150. That we know, but you can get anywhere between these two as well. People have completed exam in 120, 125, 130. So they are now using AI to evaluate you as well. So exam engine has that artificial intelligence capability to evaluate you. Moment they feel that they've evaluated you enough, they complete the exam. So you may pass, you may fail, that's a separate story, but they have to gather the sufficient evidence that they have tested you. Moment that happens, they close the exam for you. And the maximum duration for this exam is 3 hours. Passing grade remains the same, 700 out of 1000 points. Number of domains remain the same as we have already looked at. As I said, this language, this is applicable only for English language takers. For other languages, it is still a linear based exam. One thing which is important to understand is what are the pros and cons for this. The pros is obviously the duration has changed. Earlier, when it was a 6 hours exam, guys, I gave the exam when it was 6 hours. It was extremely hectic. I felt I am completely drained out as I have run a marathon post completing the exam. It was so mentally tiring. I literally from the training center, I went to my office. I was very happy I cleared the exam, but I just for almost 30 minutes I just slept on my chair. I felt so tired. It was very difficult to focus on anything post that. But with 3 hours, you're focused. You now have to focus for only 3 hours instead of 6 hours. So the time and 3 hours again is the maximum time, right? Now, if you have reached maybe 125 questions and they think they have evaluated you enough, the exam may end in 1.5 hours as well. Exam may end in 2 hours as well. So the focus requirement has decreased, and that's a very big plus point. Also, you are getting less number of questions. Earlier, it was fixed 250 questions. Now you may get 100 to 150 questions. So even that, the number of questions have come down significantly. I think that again is a very big benefit. Yeah, one con, you cannot change your previous answers because your next question will depend on how you have answered the previous question. So as I said, if you are answering, and one way to gauge whether you're doing an exam well or not, what happens is if you are the difficulty level of the questions are gradually increasing, then you can guess that you are doing well because you are answering the questions correctly. That's why the difficulty level of the exam is increasing. So that can be one method of evaluating yourself, how you're doing in the exam. And one more thing that you need to understand is in exam, and I'm pretty confident every CISSP instructor would state that in exam you'll definitely find questions which you have never seen. So don't get disheartened, don't break your head and don't cry over it because moment you do that, you do two things. One, you lose your confidence. Second, you waste your time. So to avoid it, if you don't know anything, try to do a smart guess, try to eliminate answers, and then select maybe you're confused between two or you're out of four, you're confused among the two, which can be the answer. So select one out of that. Do a smart guess, but don't waste on time. Anyway, it is not rocket science that you will, if you don't know something, suddenly something will pop up in your brain and you will find it out, right? So that is not going to happen. So there's no point of wasting and wasting time on it and crying over it. Just move on if you're not, if you don't know the answer. And if you find something very new where you're completely confused, you've never heard about it, don't get disheartened. There is every chance that you'll get that because 25 questions in the exam are for future evaluation, for future upgradation of exam. And those 25 questions, they don't tell you which those 25 questions are. And you're not evaluated for those 25 questions as well. So if you're finding something extremely new or you're seeing it for first time, don't get disheartened. My piece of advice here. So coming to preparation strategy, see, in preparation strategy, we'll talk about multiple things. We'll talk about materials to be used. We'll talk about mindset. We'll talk about do's and don'ts because I feel that is very important. First, we understand the mindset, do's and don'ts, and we understand how to apply those things. Then we can build up a strategy based on that. So first, I'll start with the mindset. It's an ideal world exam. What do I mean by that? It is a exam which is expecting that all the procedures and policies are being followed. Right? In real world, what happens? Suppose someone is working in an access management team and I need access to maybe an application or maybe some extra privileges I need. What do? I go ahead and say if I have a friend in that team, I say just give me their access for 15 minutes. I need it, and then again, I'm not encouraging this practice. This is a bad practice, but these things can happen. But when you're writing the exam, and you are preparing for it, think what will happen in ideal world. Ideal world, you will not have these privileges where you can go and talk to someone and take access without any proper approvals in place. So that is what I want to you to believe and feel when you are taking the exam. Remember that it's an ideal world exam where everything is being done in the proper order. And don't forget when you're answering questions, this is extremely important. When you're confused between two or three options, and it is very likely that you'll get confused in exam when the difficulty level increases, you'll more often than not get confused between two options. The best option for you would be which is cost effective, and maybe you may have, there is a question on applying a control, and you have two controls which you are confused with. So when you are thinking about that control, think which will be a better cost effective solution and which will also be a people friendly solution, then apply that. You have to balance those things. So when you're answering questions, you're confused between two options. One of the things you can keep in mind while selecting one option is to select a cost effective solution. And one more thing which I would like to add here, in exam, when the difficulty level increases, you will not find direct questions. If you get a question on SMTP port, you get a question on DNS port B, there is only one answer for this. There is no confusion here. There is either you know it or you don't know it. That's a separate story, but the answer is only one, right? And but for scenario based questions, there can be more than one right answer, but you have to select the best among them. Even if they don't mention which should be the best option, by default for KISP, you should remember that best is already hidden in the question. They are expecting you to select the best option, especially in the scenario-based questions. One more thing which I've already talked about, it should be easy to implement, because if something is very complex, and it is not only it should be easy to implement, it should be easy to follow as well. For example, generally when we go to a secure area in our organization, we swipe our cards, right? We have the access card given, we swipe our card inside going a secure area. In some places, I've seen people put thumb impression or maybe some kind of biometric to go. But instead of swiping that card or maybe a thumb impression, I put a retina scanning there or a iris scanning, iris scanner there. People would bypass the control. What they'll do is they'll keep the door open. Anyone can come in or go out, because people will get fed up, because every time they have to come put their eye on the scanner, it will take a lot of time first to implement it properly, because it may be oversensitive or may be less sensitive, or and for people also it is very intrusive, so they'll not like it. So to avoid it, whatever I'm implementing, implement which is not complex. If it, there may be for some solution we'll only find complex solution for some certain scenario. That's a separate story. But wherever I can find simple solutions, and also when also think about people, because ultimately people have to follow it. I have a password policy which talks about 20-digit password. What will people do? They'll start writing down the password, and that's, as a security professional, is a disaster for me when people start writing or noting down their password. I cannot have a password length of 20, 30 digits. Yeah, in a very secure environment, I'm logging onto a server. I may use a password manager to have a very complex password. That's fine. But while logging onto my laptop or desktop, I cannot have that 20, 30 digits password. That will not work out. Again, I've already stressed on this point. So moving forward, think as a risk advisor manager. This is very important. You're not here to solve the problem. Remember that. When you're taking the questions, remember which question is pointing towards becoming. If you are a risk advisor, what will you advise? Think on those lines. Your job is to advise. Your job is not to solve the problem. Decision making is with the management. You say that the vulnerability has to be patched in next 1 week. The job is to give that suggestion, but you are not there to actually implement those vulnerabilities. Sorry, implement those patches. You're not there to implement those patches. Patches implementation, you may do it later, but a sign off from senior management or someone from your management team has to be taken first to do that. And obviously, you have to follow the processes which are defined in your organization. You have to follow your change management process. So remember that, yeah, this is extreme, very true for people who are from technical background. They moment they see a problem, they see something burning, they go ahead and try to solve the problem. You see open unused open ports on firewall, support ports like 22, which is SSH, 23, Telnet, all these are open. The from a technical point of view, the first action would be to close those ports. But in real world, you don't do that. You follow the change management process, because if you do that, you don't have that documented, you will be found in audit, and there are high chances that you will be questioned on it. And in some cases, you may, if you've done something and because of that something broke, you may lose your job as well. So think as a risk advisor manager is very important. Don't try to solve a problem. I'm saying, sorry, advice on solving a problem, but you yourself is not solving a problem. People life is of utmost priority. The simple answer to that, if you ask me why, obviously people cannot be replaced. If someone loses their life, they cannot come back. A server, a machine, a firewall, a desktop, a laptop can be replaced. I know if you lose data, ransomware attack, everything is encrypted, you don't have backups in place. I know you will lose reputation, you'll lose money, but still with better policies in place, next time you learn your lessons and you can improve over time. But if someone dies, they are not coming back, right? Someone loses a limb, someone loses a hand or a leg, they are not coming back. They're not coming back. So when you find options talking about people life, that can be one of the options in exam, but it depends on the scenario. I'm not telling just blindly select that option, but these options has to be given privilege over other options. Security is everyone's responsibility. You would have heard that if you're working for a corporate, you would have heard that many times in the security awareness training that responsibility lies with everyone. You need to be aware of the policy and you need to follow the policy. Very important. You cannot, your policy state, don't share the password and you share it, you are liable for punishment. Very important part again from the exam point of view, accountability of implementing the controls or enforcing a policy lies with the senior management. You are responsible to follow what is given to you, what is the designated policies put in place by the senior management. But accountability of implementing those, making sure those are implemented, first planning has to happen and then obviously implementation. Those accountability lies with senior management. So don't forget about it, because an exam they may trick you in questions giving you who's in they may give you a scenario and say who is accountable for this. So when it is accountability, and they may, instead of just mentioning senior management, they may say board of directors, a governance team, or CEO, something these kind of options. So in those cases, think about accountability lies with the senior management and then select one. Follow the policy. As I said, it's an ideal world exam, and you need to follow the policy in place. We have discussed this point again, so just moving forward, you document everything. Yeah, one of the problems, especially with me, was I still hate it, but I do it now, especially after clearing the ISSP. I was very bad at documenting things. I somehow hate to document things. And I think it's a normal human behavior. We don't like to document everything, but documentation is very important, right? Especially when we talk about risk management, you are accepting a risk for any reason. There can be n number of reasons. I not get into that. It's important that you document it and take that hand on senior management, because if something goes wrong because of accepting it, you are liable for punishment. Okay, understood the mindset. I'll just go through that again. Ideal world exam, security should be cost effective. Security solution should be easy to implement. It should be people friendly. You are a risk advisor manager. You're not here to actually go ahead and solve the problem. You are advising the people, you are advising the management to solve the problem. People life is of utmost priority. Security is everyone's responsibility. Accountability lies with senior management. Follow the policy, you document everything. Again, I'll not say this is an exhaustive list, but few of the very important points I wanted to discuss. That's why I've talked about mindset. So now let us test how much you have understood about the mindset. So this question basically will test your mindset. I'm actually running the timer here. Take a couple of minutes and let me know what's your answer. So the reason, first of all, let me tell you the reasoning behind putting this here. The whole reasoning was to give you a glimpse of what you can expect in exam. You may get questions. If I look at this question, one thing is very clear. Option one can be ruled out because that's pretty costly. I may have space to build queue because, but I'll not do that because it's very costly solution for me. Option four is actually a irrelevant option, because encrypting or password protecting files will not help against shoulder surfing, because shoulder surfing is basically someone looking over your shoulder. So if whatever you're doing on screen, you will anyway do in plain text. You will not encrypt and do something while working on something. So they can still look over your screen, right? So 1 and 4 is already ruled out. So now the question remains between second and third, what is the best option, right? And for me, again, this is not from any book. This is self-made. For me, the third option is the most, I'll say, the best option among the given four options. The reason being, if I build dividers, I'm spending, first, there are two reasons behind it. One, I'm spending extra money. Second, think about team connection as well, right? I'm building dividers between each people, and suppose there are 10 people part of a team. For them, communicating among themselves will also be difficult, right? Think on those lines as well. Leave everything. What will your think of these? I said connect everything to the real world. What will your organization do in this case? If your organization is facing this kind of problem, what will they do? Whether they'll build dividers or they'll go for option three. Okay, so moving on. So few do's and don'ts. Have a study plan in place. It's very important. I struggled a lot because I didn't have a fixed study plan, right? And when I say study plan, whatever works for you. Some people may like to burn midnight lamp. Some people prefer early morning study. Some people maybe they finish their office at 6 or 7 or their whatever work they have, and then they want to sit. Whatever works for you, have that plan in place. That's very important. Guys, please be on mute if you're not speaking. The second option is set long and short term goals, because it's very important that you do that, because this exam is like running a marathon. It's not that you will prepare maybe for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you will clear. I'm not saying there are people who have done that preparation within 2 weeks and clearing the exam, but majority take much longer than that. So it's like running a marathon. So you have to do bit by bit daily. Think of it, even if you can fill a drop in a day, it's like filling an ocean, but you fill a drop slowly, gradually, that drop will convert an ocean gradually. But you need to fill something daily. That is what your goal should be. So when I say short term goal should be in this week, daily. I'll based on your timings. You know what works for you. Look at your timetable. You look at your meetings. Look at everything. Look at what's the structure at home. What like how much family time needs to be given, and based on that plan, maybe I can accommodate maybe 1 hour every weekday, Monday to Friday, and Saturday, Sunday, I can maybe give 1 hour in morning, 1 hour evening, so 2 hours. So what is there? I'm getting 9 hours to study. So in this 9 hours, in this in this next week, I want to cover this, and this is what my key focus would be. And by end of this week, I should have maybe probably just for example, think domain one is completed. I need to complete domain one. Long term goal would be in next month one, what will I cover? So every week I'm doing this, and like next month probably I'll complete the book. In next month I'm reading from the official study guide, the Cybex book, and I complete the domain one by I'll complete the complete book by end of this month. So that is how you should fix the, and you can change your goals based on what you've seen, right? There are chances that some suddenly you fall sick for 2 days, you're unable to study. So then relook at your goal, but have that goal in mind, because it's very difficult if you don't have that. I struggled a lot with my personal experience. I'm telling you, I didn't have a proper study plan, and I struggled. Moment I made that plan, I was able to come clear the exam in 3 months. Moment I fixed my plan, no, I have to do it, and this is what my plan is. 3 months was sufficient for me to clear the exam. Make notes, very important. How you can make notes, I'll talk about it in the coming slides, but making notes is very important, because and make notes in a way which you can understand. Don't write some gibberish thing which you cannot understand later. It may be taking a piece of paper and writing over it, or it may be e-note, maybe a Word document or a PDF document you want to make, but make something. I'll prefer you to write, because it is when you write something on a piece of paper, you remember it. Have a proper book dedicated for CISSP and write anything, whatever you have learned on that. Make your notes and make, if maybe for the entire domain one, maybe you have a notes of maybe 25, 30 pages, right? So that will help you to summarize and quickly go through. If you're confused, you forgot, because chances of forgetting is very high. You're reading domain two, you may be forgetting something from domain one. So you come back, you do a quick review by doing your notes, and then you move forward again. So making notes is very important. As I already talked about this, think about what you can relate to your real world. I've already given that point to point protocol example where I saw it while swiping my card. So think of this. What is the application of this in the real world? Where is it applied? Whatever you're reading, it will help you to remember, and also later on when you're looking for a job role, you're giving an interview, or maybe within your job role, you're answering some questions that will help you when you relate it to the real world. It may take some extra time for preparation because you're trying to find out the application, but this exam focuses a lot on why. But for knowing why, you should know what. You should know what is there and why it is there is important. Moment you can answer why, I'm pretty confident that you will be able to clear the exam. But for anything, whatever the courseware covers, you should be able to answer why. The moment you do that, you are good to go ahead and take the exam. Stick to one study no source at the start is very important. Whether you are going for a training, whether you're going for self study, maybe you pick some well-known books, well-known material. It may be some video you want to watch. I'll talk about the materials which you can view. I'll discuss about the materials as well in the coming slides. But it's very important that you stick to it. You don't look at too many things at the start. The reason being is every author is trying to convey the same thing, but the way of conveying will differ. The way I teach, if suppose you're taking training for me, the way I teach, and maybe some ex person who is also a CISSP instructor, not saying that person will not be good, or that person may be a world renowned trainer as well, but the way he teaches will be different than my way of teaching, right? So you will get confused if you go through too many materials at the start. Stick to one material, very important. Few don'ts: irregular study plan, as I've already talked about. What can be the issue if you have irregular study plan? If you study for 2 days, don't study for a week, then you will forget whatever you read in the last 2 days. The 2 days previously you read, again you will read the same thing. It will just waste your time. Don't have irregular study plan. Make up your mind, make up a schedule. You will find a struggle initially, but over a period of time you will overcome that. Moment you start finding interest, and interest you will find when you relate things with the real world and see, oh, you will get, I knew that we are doing this, but now I find out why we are doing this. So you will, moment you start answering those questions, and by reading material, some of those questions will already be answered. You will feel really happy, and then you will feel like studying. Moment you get into that gear of studying regularly, half your job is done. Overdo questions at the initial stages. I did that a lot. That's again with personal experience. I'm telling you, as I said again, each author. I suppose I'm doing questions from different materials, different authors. Again, I may get confused, and there may be some questions which are interconnected between different domains. The question may be part of third domain, but question talk about some concepts from the domain 7. So it will confuse me. So don't overdo. I will get disheartened and I'll stop studying ultimately if I overdo questions. So remember that, and I've been a victim of that. That's why I'm stating for you. Please don't overdo questions at the start. You once your preparation is complete, then you can look at different materials to look at what can be the best material for you to go ahead and answer questions from. Follow too many advices. Again, have one or two mentors. Everyone has their own journey. So if you follow too many advices, it will confuse you more, right? We say too many cooks spoil the broth. So that will happen with you. So don't follow too many advices. Have those one or two guys whom you can reach out to and they can help you. So, and again, I struggled with that as well. Moment someone cleared the exam, I used to, if I know them personally, I used to call them and ask how they did. If I'm reading a blog on how they cleared, I used to follow the advices they have mentioned. Something which has worked for me may not work for you. So you are the best judge what will work for you. Yeah, there are some set of standards which you can follow, which others have done and they have that have worked for them. That is not the case that it will, if something has worked for someone, it is not a guarantee that it will work for everyone, right? Think about things which will work for you. You need to plan it well. You can definitely take support and help from others, but don't overdo those things again. Get disheartened by listening to others. Someone will say, I cleared the exam in 1 month. Don't get disheartened. Okay, someone cleared the exam in 1 month, fine, but I may take 3 months, I may take 6 months. It is my own time I'm taking. Don't get disheartened. And also, there would be people you'll find around you who will say, yeah, why are you spending whole day in a book? So there will be people around you to discourage you as well. And there will be people around who would say they cleared in one month or 2 months or 15 days, and you're sitting with the courseware from the last 6 months and you're still not prepared. Don't get disheartened by that. that can happen with anyone. Don't give up. As I already said, there are chances that things can get overwhelming at times, but believe me, if you follow a proper preparation strategy, exam will become easy. I just want to add here that it is not impossible to clear the exam. Many have cleared and you can definitely clear. I'll not say exam is a cakewalk. No, it is not. It is relatively difficult, but it is not impossible. Please believe in that. Whenever you feel like giving up, talk to your mentor. Moving on to recommended materials, I'm pretty confident if you have been preparing, you would be aware of this book, the Cybex 8th edition from three authors, James Michael, Mike Chaplin, and Daryl Gibson. Very common material used across the world. And I feel, again, this is my, I've not done a survey or anything, but I feel this is the most common material used across the board. Cybex is relatively easy to understand. The wordings, the scenarios they have talked about, they talked about few of their experiences in few cases, and you will be able to connect with it. So it's relatively easy to understand. And I highly recommend this book to anyone who's preparing for CISSP. One more book which is very common is the Sean Harris All-in-One Guide. Editions are important. 8th edition is the latest one for both the Cybex and the Sean Harris All-in-One Guide. We will get the 9th edition as well, but it's not yet out because post the changes which have occurred from May 2021, we'll get the latest book as per the post changes. So, but the books are not out yet. Probably we are expecting the book to be out in September, but we don't have a confirmation yet. The last I checked. One more very common material which is used is the CBK reference. Again, this is a official ISC Square guide. It is little different from the official Cybex book, but my recommendation is if you're just starting your preparation, you start with the Cybex 8th edition. Don't go directly into the CISSP CBK reference 5th edition because book language is little difficult to understand, but I would highly recommend you to go through that book post your preparation, post you have prepared from another material, maybe a Sean Harris or maybe from Cybex book. Then you can come to this book as a additional reference guide, and you can just walk through. I'm not telling you to read in detail, just at least walk through because this is the official CISSP language you will find in this book. And the questions also, which is part of this book, are pretty difficult. Cybex questions are relatively easy. So you will find difficult questions, you will find CISSP level questions in this book as well. I'll recommend it, but not at the start. Start with Cybex or Sean Harris, and then you can move on to this book. For testing, again, one thing which I want to point out is these lists which I provided, don't think these are this is the end. There is tons of material on CISSP these days. You just have to research and you'll find tons of material. But I'm telling you the most common ones which are used. For the practice book, you can take these are again official ICSL material. Practice test 1 and the 1st and the 2nd edition. I'll definitely recommend that. That's a must. That's a must for your preparation. You should definitely have it when you're preparing for CISSP because it's an official practice test book. All others are not officially coming from IC Square. That's why this is the most recommended material for practicing for the exam. So for the test, definitely go through the 1st and the 2nd edition. Highly recommend that. And if you buy the Cybex book, you will get the online test banks as well. How to access that? You will get the instructions on the CISSP 8th edition of the Cybex. You will find it how to access it. So, and I've even mentioned the link there. You can go to the link directly, but they ask you to register, and you can register when you have the book with you. I also highly recommend for practicing questions, Study Notes and Theory, which is from Luke Ahmed. He is based in US. He is running a group called the Study Notes and Theory, or SNT in short. There is a Facebook group, and this group has almost, I think, I don't remember the latest number, but I think it is close to 50,000. So, and often people post a lot of questions there. But Luke Ahmed, very own website, the Study Notes and Theory, you get, I think, close to 750 questions. But this is subscription based. I think you have to pay around $30 per month. If you take for a longer duration, you have to pay maybe for 3 months. There is a separate pricing. You will get some discount in the price, and for 6 months you'll get even more discount. But very good book. I'll recommend that. It's not. And few other things which you would like to add. There is from Boston you get the online testing as well. You can use Boston. Just search for it, BOSON on Google. You'll find out Boston testing for CISSP. Again, you have to pay for that. It's not free of cost. But use this materials, Lukehammer, study notes and theory, as well as Boston, whatever you want to use, only when you have done practice tests from ISC Square first. Because it's very important, as I said, it's the official book. So use that first and then go to different materials. Again, there are other materials as well. But I'll advise you, there is practice test book from Sean Harris as well. All-in-one Sean Harris practice test is there as well. I've not mentioned that, but you can use that book as well. But don't, again, as I've advised you, don't overdo, don't go through too many materials. People say, I'll go through 10,000 questions. I've seen people going through 8,000, 10,000 questions and still failing exam. Important thing is, how do you apply? That is very important. Whether when you are answering the question, it is clearing your concept or not. It is how do you manage, how are you managing time when you're answering those questions. So if you do that well, it's enough. And one very, I would highly recommend you to, when you are practicing test and preparing for it, you have gone through the material and now you are in the Q&A phase. At that time, when you get a question wrong, go through it. Why did you make a mistake? Whether you overread the question, that is one very common problem. We overread, or we miss some key points. Suppose in question we may find must, should, these kind of words we generally miss. So you should be remembering. You should read it. So my recommendation is read the question at least twice, and then try to see the options. Just don't give a one read and then go forward. Just don't run like a train. I know time is short, but you have sufficient time to read the question twice. So at least read it twice. If required, read it thrice also, but don't spend too much time. Don't read it 10 times. But if you don't know the answer, it's not that suddenly out of blue you'll get that answer. So, but at least do read it twice. Very important, and see why did you get something wrong. So that you should remember. Why did I make this mistake? You need to have that analysis, whether my concept was not clear, or I didn't read the question properly, or this was something which was very new to me. I have never heard about this. Some videos, you can find Kelly Henderson videos on cybrary.it. These videos are not comprehensive. This will give you high level overview of the exam. I'll say this will help you to prepare 30%. You can use this video as a start, or maybe as a revision in end. In both ways you can use it. When you use it at start, it will give you high level overview on what each domain cover, and few topics are covered. Few things are really well explained by Kelly. Kelly has been a CISP instructor for a long time, and she is very well known across the industry as well. So cybrary.it you can utilize, but again, that's a paid videos. When I was preparing, cybrary.it was free. Now they have made it a subscription based model where you have to pay around, I think it is $49 per month, or $49.99, almost $50 per month. My chapter videos, these are again very good videos. I think there are around overall videos are around 26 hours. You will find it on LinkedIn Learning. If you have taken the LinkedIn Learning subscription, do go through my chapter video. That will help you a lot, because he's one of the authors of the Cybex book as well. So highly recommend it if you want to be a visual learner. And my dear friend and the founder of InfoSec Train, Prab Nair, has tons of videos on YouTube. He has talked about few. He has given domain overviews. He has and the domain overviews are pretty helpful, and he has talked about some specific topics as well, which you can look at. Some pretty confusing topics he have talked about and tried to explain it in simple language. This is free of cost, so definitely go through that. It will help you. And there is CISSP mind map videos as well. This will help you when you have few days to go for the exam. You have maybe probably a week left for you're writing an exam in week. Then this mind maps will help you, because this is like an overview of each domain. There's not a in-depth coverage, but this will give you an overview of each domain. So you can definitely go to Rob Switcher. They have for all 8 domains, they have done the videos. They have given mind maps as well. So definitely utilize that. And also before exam, you can go through Memory Palace by Prashant Mohan. I've not mentioned that on my slide, but Prashant Mohan is also one of the instructors at Infosec Train, and his book is also highly recommended by people of late. Very good book to remember. And also, you can read Luke Ahmed's official book as well. He has launched a book as well, Think Like a Manager. I'm giving you all these. You can select, as I said, don't overdo. Select top 2 or 3 which will work for you, and then select a material and then start preparation. Please don't go through all the materials and you'll only get confused. I'm telling you whatever list I know. I'm telling you free materials. I'm talking about free material. I'm talking about paid materials. I'm talking about both. You, if you have money, spend on, and you have to be smart in spending money. We, none of us has unlimited money, right? So you have to be smart. We don't want to spend money on each and everything. So spend money. Think what will help me. Based on that, I'll spend money. I'll take subscription of this. Since we have talked about do's and don'ts, we talked about recommended materials, we talked about mindset. Now let us look at the strategy for preparation. Again, this strategy is just one thing which you can follow. You may have your own strategy. As I said, you need to figure out what works best for you. So I'll just quickly read through it. No rocket science here. Gather all the materials you require for your preparation. That's important. Don't in between when you're preparing. Don't search for materials in between. Don't waste your time there. When before preparation, think about how you want to prepare and gather all those materials and keep it handy, right? And have a weekly or a daily schedule. As I said, I've already discussed about it. Whatever works for you, have make a schedule based on that, and start your prep with the primary resource. Like you want to maybe go through, you want to start with maybe Mike Chapler videos, or you want to go through the Cybex 8th edition to start with. But as I said, stick to only one material and start only go through that. You need to start your preparation only with that material and then go forward. And second thing, I'll highly recommend you. You may think there is too much of a work, but it is highly recommended that you go through that material again and make some notes. That your notes may not be comprehensive, it may not contain everything, but you should, while giving a second read or maybe going through videos again second time, you should make some notes and then utilize your secondary material. Like for example, I told you maybe you go through Sean Harris book, then you are going for topics you don't understand, utilize your secondary material, or you can do the Google search as well to understand. And now you need to update. Make sure when you are doing that secondary read, you need to update your material or the notes you have made. You have to make it comprehensive. It has to be complete now, and it has to be readily accessible to you as well. It may be you are writing in a book. I'll recommend you not to write on piece of paper because you will lose that. But write in a binded book so that it remains with you. Even after completing the exam, you can still refer that, right? So, or you're making e-notes. Make sure that e-notes are readily available whenever you want it. So whatever way. And last but not the least, go through the practice questions from at least 2 different resources, but don't overdo, as I said, and then go ahead, schedule and write the exam. So with this strategy, with self-study, you can take anywhere between 4 to 6 months. Again, that's a standard time which people generally take, but you may complete it within 3 months as well. It depends how much time you can spend per day, right? Instead of spending 1 hour per day, you are spending 5 hours per day. It is you'll obviously complete the exam, or you will be prepared for the exam earlier compared to others. So it depends. And second strategy would be you can go ahead and take training. And I'll highly recommend that you take training from well-known institute. But there are some cheaper options available. But the quality of training, make sure you are asking questions and you are taking reviews before attending the training. Just because there is a cheaper option available, just don't go for the training. It will just waste your time. And also prepare short notes while training, especially if the trainer says this is very important, then mark it up, make notes. And second time, suppose you have gone through an online training, trainer have posted training, trainer have sent you the materials, trainer have sent you the recorded videos. Once you do that, once you go through the recorded videos and materials, please make sure that you are making a comprehensive notes for yourself, which you understand. Post that, make sure you go through the official study guide. It may be from Sean Harris, it may be Cybex, it may be the CBK reference book. And once you are done, your preparation is complete. The only thing left is practice questions, and then you go ahead and schedule and write the exam. With that, I would say it was really nice to have all of you. We got quite a good presence and really enjoyed talking about CISSP and my personal journey. Thank you all for your time. Have a wonderful day ahead.